good.
That's right. That was because they came and used space.
Okay, we might make a start, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking the time. We've got some people streaming online as well, so let's kick off and just see where this sort of conversation goes in terms of people in the audience and streaming. So. Thank you very much for your time. For those of you that don't know me, Jonathan Pheasant, General Manager of the faculty here. As is customary, let me acknowledge the Bedigal people, the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet today. I pay my respects to the elders both past and present, and I extend those respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today or listening in. The purpose of this conversation is really following on from the conversation or the session we had on Tuesday, where I presented to the professional staff that were directly impacted as part of the workplace change process, and I talked through the implementation plan. This session was an open invite to the faculty following that session. So for those of you that were at the session on Tuesday, some of these slides will look familiar, but for those of you that weren't or is streaming in that weren't able to access or watch the session from Tuesday, there should be some new content. As always, I've only got a few slides, and I'd like to then spend as much of the time as possible asking any questions that you may have. Okay. So, really, what I wanted to discuss today was to give people an overview of the process itself. How did we get to this point this afternoon, where I'm talking to the broader faculty around the workplace change process. I'd like to give people some information about the consultation process and the feedback that we received as part of the workplace change process across not only this faculty but all of the faculties that were involved throughout the process, and then go into a little bit of detail around the structures that we've agreed upon, and talk in the main around the sort of the transition milestones, or what might the sort of coming months look like, and what are the activities that we need to do in order to transition into the new model. Before I sort of move into the detail, just wanted to, I think it's important that we cover off, why did we undertake this process? What was the intent behind this, and really what's the direction, what's the future we want to head to. So first and foremost, it's about investing in our staff, making sure that our staff have positions, they have clarity on their roles. There's some obvious investment in skills development and their career development. Really important. But it's also about making sure that the faculty itself has the capability and the capacity to do that it wants to do. Okay, and if we look across the faculty, our schools, our centres and institutes, it has been varied over time, and this whole process is actually really focused on making sure we have consistent effort in place, we have consistent resources, roles look similar, and so we can start to develop this concept of sort of cohorts across the faculty. We can pull our education support capability, we can look at our research support capability, and also our sort of postgraduate support capability. So we're really focused on the core business of the faculty, the research that we do and the teaching that we do. So all of the structures are really aimed to make sure we have the right investment in those roles to deliver what we need to deliver. Where possible, we're standardising position descriptions and roles and responsibilities, not only across the faculty, but across all faculties. Okay, and this is really important, so we can look across the entirety of the university and see some consistency, rather than faculties really taking their own sort of decisions into their own hands. So a little bit more structure around that, and I think that gives people much greater sort of clarity around what's their next step, what does their position look like, and then link up with kind of colleagues across school centres and institutes, not only within medicine but also across other faculties, particularly other STEM faculties like science and engineering, as the university moves towards sort of precinct models and cross-disciplinary study and research, that becomes increasingly important for us. Okay, I just wanted to sort of recap. How did we get to this point today where I'm sort of standing up and talking to you? And it's been a long process for everyone. Many people have been involved in the conversations, ranging from one-on-one conversations, small group conversations, workshops that we've run across the board. So there's been a huge investment from people, and I'm certainly incredibly appreciative of everyone's time and effort to get to this point today. So really we had to start looking at what did we currently do today. So what were the activities that were undertaken across our schools, centres and institutes, who did those activities, what were the positions like, a whole range of information to get to the point where we had a solid understanding of the current state. Okay? We then had lots of conversations around what does the future state look like? What could it look like? Okay, what are some of those opportunities? What are some of the challenges that we might need to address in order to deliver what we need to deliver? Okay, and so that involved, again, a series of workshops where we started to, where we met with professional staff and academics around what are the things that medicine needs to address moving forward? What are those opportunities that we have? What are some of those challenges that we want to address as part of that? And when you have the current state and future state lined up, you can see the gap then. You can see, okay, what things do need to change. Not only what positions might need to change, but then what processes need to change, what systems need to change to sort of underpin the structure, okay? And that really got us to the point where we're starting to identify then what's the potential impact on people, okay? If we are shifting from this current state to the future state, what is the impact on individuals, on their positions, okay? And that led us to the Workplace to Change proposal document that was released on the 8th of August that presented a proposal. It presented a proposed structure and the impact on positions. We had position descriptions drafted for people to look at, and so there was a huge amount of consultation from that point up until essentially the consultation closed and we released the implementation paper, you know, about 4:30 on Tuesday. Okay, so a huge amount of work to get to that point. And it was incredible feedback that we received, and I just wanted to sort of talk a little bit about that now. Medicine received sort of 58 responses throughout the consultation process. Those responses were either at an individual level or they were collated at a sort of a group level or a team level, or in fact at a school level. Okay, so a huge amount of feedback, really comprehensive, and that's not really including the feedback that we got to the position descriptions as well. The whole lot of editing and redrafting that we received as part of that process to the position descriptions. And as a result, there were some very real and tangible changes made to the proposal. Okay? I think when I presented the Workplace Change proposal, I attempted to stress over and over again that it was a proposal and I anticipate things will change. And they did change. And in some cases, they changed quite significantly. Okay? The main points certainly were related to the classification of roles and the structure of roles. In our schools, have we got the right structure to deliver the teaching support and the research support? In our quite specialist areas around our Biological Resources Centre, our Gross Anatomy Support Unit, have we got the right structures in place to really deliver those very specific research and teaching support services? Okay, huge amount of feedback in that. I've talked to the PDs, really comprehensive commentary on those PDs around the responsibilities, around classifications, and particularly for our clinical schools in terms of the interaction with many stakeholders external to UNSW. So our LHDs, the hospitals, New South Wales Health, etc. Really important for us as a faculty. We looked to standardise position titles. So it varied wildly, as I mentioned, across the faculty. So we've looked to standardise that as a result of the feedback. 10 positions that were previously flagged to be disestablished in the workplace change proposal were re-established, were essentially retained, and I guess in reverse, two positions that we had flagged to be retained were disestablished. So some very tangible changes were made to the proposal as a result of the feedback. The last point I just wanted to raise was there was a significant amount of feedback around as the faculty shifts towards delivering more shared services. So if it's taking responsibility out of school centres and institutes to deliver shared services, which I should add we already deliver today, then it's important that we understand what are those services that are going to be delivered. Let's make sure we define those services. What are the standards that actually researchers, academics, students, etc. should expect from those services being delivered? And let's make sure we actually quantify them and detail them. But then we also need to make sure we govern them and manage them and track them and monitor them. So that was a huge amount of, a huge component of the feedback was to actually make sure, sort of ask a lot of questions and lead to the start of developing a transition plan that allows us to embed all of these things. Okay, that's going to take some time as we move through and look at our services, set them up, and really understand how best to deliver the services in the future. But it was a really key component. Okay, and we're going to make sure we have those things in place, because it's really important as a user of a service that you can understand what can be expected from those areas or those teams delivering those services, and vice versa. As a user, I guess, what is the expectation on me in terms of that kind of that process? I've got a few quick slides I wanted to talk through, I guess, some of the highlights of the structure. So I guess a very clear strategy as part of the implementation plan is to kind of group together an educational development support, capacity and capability at a faculty level. And that we want it at a faculty level so it can support consistently, I guess, and as evenly as possible, all of our undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Okay? We get some immediate economies of scale by pulling those teams together, and some productivity. What are the lessons that we have, and the skills and experience that comes from pulling together that group is enormous immediately. Without any changes and without any additional workload to those individuals, just by pulling them together, I think we get some immediate benefit. Likewise with our laboratory managers, we already have a shared service model, I guess that is sort of the envy, certainly, of sciences and engineering. Okay, the floor-based model where we can provide, I guess, a very efficient support to our lab-based researchers across our buildings in Wallisworth, Lowy, etc. Okay, so really important. This piece, it just sort of picks up the other components that aren't quite aligned with that shared service and make sure it fits nicely. Likewise with our technical assistants across all of our laboratories. So some really important grouping of capability there. But it also, I think, just as importantly, starts to kind of shift the faculty towards this concept of cohort or kind of shared learning, shared capability, shared capacity across the core parts of our business. So education support, research support, our postgraduate support. Okay? It means that we can start to actually pull together all of the education support effort that does sit out in the schools and will continue to sit out in the schools, but actually then start to join them together as a group. Okay? And I really think the power of that cohort will give medicine a significant lift. Okay? Because we do some amazing things out at our clinical schools, as an example, in terms of the way that we support our undergraduate medicine program, but it does differ. Okay, and this is about trying to get some consistency whilst not losing the kind of the nuances and the characteristics of our individual clinical schools, but it allows us to get some consistency, and I think with that comes a greater kind of experience for our academics, our conjoints, and our students. Similarly, to a similar concept with our postgraduate researchers. So a huge volume, a huge activity, and a huge strategy for this faculty in terms of trying to build its HDR numbers and support them, to actually allow them to graduate faster, to actually give them a greater experience, and to really develop our pipeline of future researchers, okay? And so if we can enhance that capability that we have, make it really quite focused, but then start to pull that group together as a cohort, I think we get some immediate benefits from that. Similarly with sort of administrative support, you know, not to be lost the stuff that just needs to be done across our schools, centres and institutes. Really important that we have the right level of effort sitting in those particular areas and those local areas. Okay, so this is not, in these areas, this is not about trying to pull together these resources and sit them in an ivory tower and our schools have no effort. This needs to be locally based, okay? Really important that I stress that. Okay, just a very quick summary of the agreed structure here. So it's about looking at our school manager reporting line and making sure we have some consistency there around the responsibilities of those school managers and really allow them or enhance them to operate at a really strategic level within our schools. We are creating some new quite senior roles across our education and our research support, okay? $300 million business, 45% of research revenue for the entire university. Okay, we need to make sure we have the right amount of research support capacity at a professional staff level to support our academics, our senior executives, etc., in terms of delivering on the research strategy for the faculty. Okay, and likewise within our education support, looking at opportunities that exist across new courses, programs, etc. What market research is telling us and how can we incorporate that market research into the decisions that we do. Also about building some capacity to make sure we're a little smarter in our decisions, using the data that we have available to us to help determine what decisions should we make, etc. And really building a platform to allow us to grow as across our professional staff effort as our business grows. So as our teaching grows, as our research grows, then our professional staff must grow to support that. Okay, I wanted to spend a little bit of time now just talking about the sort of the transition milestones. What does the sort of the next month look like? What does the next 3 months look like? The next 6 months and then beyond that? Okay, so people get a sense of how this is going to look and feel, because it's really important to recognize that this is not going to feel immediately different as of sort of tomorrow, or when the implementation paper was released on Tuesday, it doesn't feel any different, okay? And it's not really going to feel different until such time that we've got people filled in positions. We've got our new positions filled, okay? We've then got some process change happening. We've got some system change happening. We've got people sitting where we want them to sit, okay? And then we've got a really clear plan in terms of how do we move. That's when I think we'll really see the momentum pick up and the faculty move towards its sort of service delivery model. The first sort of month or so is sort of unashamedly focused on the recruitment process. It is about making sure we fill our new and vacant positions with the best possible people into those roles. So the expression of interest process opens on Monday for those people that are in disestablished positions, okay? We'll kind of go through a process there for those people in the first round, and as roles are not filled because of people aren't expressing an interest in that, or there's not an appropriate, there's no appropriate sort of staff for those positions, then we move on to the second round, okay, where it'll open up internally and externally, okay? And it's really going to depend on the role. Okay, we have some very specialist roles that have been that are new or vacant within the organisational structure. Okay, so the roles are going to depend on how quickly we can fill those based on actually who's in which staff are disestablished or have been in disestablished positions versus other staff that are actually across the university. Okay, so it really will depend. But we're going to make sure we manage that process, give people as much opportunity as possible. People can, through the expression of interest process, express an interest in as many roles as they want, and we'll make sure we manage that as efficiently, as seamlessly as possible for them. Okay? By the time we get to sort of October and November, we should start to see many of those positions filled. We'll move on to sort of second rounds as required to fill any other vacant positions. And then we're really starting to focus on, okay, well, when is that sort of go live date? When do people start their new position? Okay? And I would want that to be as soon as possible. Okay? Because I think the sooner people are into new positions, the quicker the faculty can move on to the sort of the new way of working. And that's really, really important. However, we don't want to sort of steal from Peter to pay Paul. Okay? So we're not going to actually just suddenly rip people out of positions and put them into new positions. We need to make sure there's a nice, smooth transition process, and that will depend again on the role that they're going to and the role that they're in at the moment. Okay, so it really does depend on how quickly we can move people, and that's exactly what we've seen across other workplace change processes within finance, within external relations. If people have been able to move quickly, we've allowed them to move quickly, and they can start in their new role. If people have had to stay because they're integral to a process that hasn't yet finished, i.e., the budget process for 2018, then some people have remained in faculties until such time that that process is finished and moved. And I think it will be really similar for us here, okay, where we're really trying to look on an individual basis and make sure we kind of manage that transition approach. As I'm anticipating that really once we get to December, any sort of work on this space will really slow down as we move into the shutdown period, okay? And then once we come out of that shutdown period, sort of mid-January and onwards, we're really ramping up that activity again, okay? We want to make sure that when we shut down, we're shut down. Everyone's got a chance to actually have a break and a holiday and spend time with family and friends. And then we'll sort of kick off again in the sort of middle to late January and into February, where we're really trying to, I think, just wrap up the remaining positions and much more focused on, okay, what is the real transition plan or the implementation plan look like in terms of any process change that we need to do? What organizational development programs or culture change programs do we want to run as a faculty to support us? What skills development training do we need for individuals that might have actually been successful moving into a position, but they might need some development or skills training, and that's really important. And we need to identify that and then give people a time to actually move into those roles and be successful in those roles. So it's really important, I think, that we support our people whilst we do that. And the first part of next year is really going to be focused on looking at individuals and understanding what support that they need, but also then looking at the faculty in our schools, in our centres, in our institutes, and actually asking ourselves, what culture do we want to have here within the Faculty of Medicine? What do we want UNSW Medicine to look and feel like? And that's really important to me, and I think there'll be a series of a program focused on that quite specifically. As we sort of move into kind of February and on, and we've got services up and running, we then need to make sure we're kind of managing those services. Actually, is this an improvement on what it was previously? And it needs to be an improvement. It might take us a while to get there, but it actually needs to actually be a benefit to us. Otherwise, you'd sort of question, well, why did we do it all in the first place? It needs to be a better experience for our researchers, our academics, our professional staff, and our students. And we need to make sure we monitor that, set some standards, understand what services we're going to be delivering, report on that, track that, and actually share that. And if something needs fixing, we need to fix it. Okay, so I think we want to move into much more of a continuous improvement approach, where we're actually identifying what isn't working well, okay, what needs to be fixed, and then move quickly on that and actually resolve those things. I don't want to let things kind of stew. The final point I just wanted to talk about before sort of opening up to any questions from the audience was just to reiterate the support to our staff throughout this process. Okay, really important to me, in terms of making sure our staff feel supported by their managers, their supervisors, by the HR teams. If they want quite individual support, then of course the employee assistant program is available to all of our staff and their immediate families as well. And we should make sure our staff feel very comfortable reaching out to actually ask for that help. Specifically in terms of preparing people for the interview process, for the expression of interest process, there is a range of training programs that have been developed that will kick off as early as the next week, the 20th. There'll be another series of training on the 28th, and we will be supporting our staff all the way through this process, okay, to make sure they feel well equipped to make the right decision in terms of what they're interested in doing, and then actually make sure they have the support to allow them to go through the process as successfully as we possibly can. Okay. The intranet site, it continues to be updated with the presentation from Tuesday. Staff that were directly impacted as part of the paper. There's information on the SharePoint site that they've all been given access to. So there is a huge amount of information available. But if you can't find it, then please reach out. Okay, we've got an HR team, your manager, or directly to myself. I have no issue being contacted and saying, you mentioned this, I can't find that, where is it? Or I have a question about X, Y, and Z, and I'll happily answer that. I'm going to take a pause there and I guess open it up to the audience to see if there's any questions. I'll repeat that question in case people are sort of streaming online, in case they can't hear. But I'm happy to take any question about any particular topic, burning issue, etc. that you might have. Hi, Kristen.
Will there be any training on the assessment centres involved there?
Yeah. So the question was in relation to training to support people going through the assessment centres. So the assessment centres are part of the recruitment process. We're modifying that recruitment process to try and accelerate it, to make it as least onerous on people as possible. So people will only need to complete a modified CV template. Then there will be what's called an assessment centre process, which is really focused on the UNSW behaviours. The training sessions on the 20th and the 28th are focused specifically on preparing for behavioural kind of interviewing. So both at a group or an individual level, the assessment centres will be focused on how well do you demonstrate the behaviours that are the UNSW behaviours. So yes, there is training available there.
Just to add to that, Jonathan, the HR managers are actually compiling a bit of an in-house training session that's in the final stages of completion. So subsequently there will be notification that will go out. I just to flag it with Jonathan as well. That will be looking at just advising staff what an assessment centre is like, what's the process, as well as actually going through the EOI process online and showing a bit of a dummy role play about applying online for that process as well, and that should occur sometime early next week.
So for those that are sort of streaming in, further answer to that was in terms of the HR teams across the university are preparing additional material on top of the training to make sure staff can understand what are the assessment centres all about, how can they best prepare, and how can they make sure they go through the process as successfully as possible. Any other questions?
I don't know a lot about the detail of these changes, but when similar things are done, two issues that are often important, both for the people who are providing the support and the people who are receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
First one is continuity.
Yep.
So people don't end up dealing with one set of supporters one day and another one the next day, and similar from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is the extent to which you really can allow for local knowledge of specific local conditions, because it's easy to find the things that are similar across the schools and research centres and so on.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot that's different.
Sure. Yeah, no,
So
absolutely.
you comment on
Yeah, absolutely. So the questions related to 2 points. One, really about the continuity, ensuring that as if you're changing from a sort of a current state to a future state, then how do you make sure you keep all of the benefits that come with continuity of people, processes, etc. And the second point related to and it's just slipped my mind. It related to
local knowledge.
the local knowledge. Thank you. In terms of making sure we keep the understand the specifics of what occurs across our school centres and institutes, while still achieving the benefits that come from actually consolidating or centralising any capability. Let me deal with the continuity issue first. So, I mean, hugely important that we make sure we retain whatever knowledge we have, and I guess the continuity of processes. If we look across our school centres and institutes, what we're seeing, and I guess the faculty as a large, what the planned implementation is, doesn't actually significantly sort of impact the operations that occur today. Okay, so yes, it does change some roles, but what this is not doing is what has occurred in other functions. This is not about picking up a huge amount of activity and shifting it. Okay, most of the effort, and I guess it comes to the second part of this around local knowledge, most of the effort, the capacity, the capability is retained in our local schools, centres and institutes. The only shared services that we've focused on, I guess, is our laboratory-based support. That is already a shared service that's been operating well. All we're doing is we're picking up some components that are outside of that. The educational development support, though, that is a new shared service. So that is about actually trying to group the capability that does exist across the faculty and some other schools and pull that together. I think that is a capability that needs to have a detailed understanding of the content, and so you only can get that, I think, if you're embedded at times within the schools, centres and institutes in terms of understanding the programs and courses that are being run. But I think actually by being part of a shared team comes the additional benefit of actually being able to kind of share innovation, share techniques, share processes, etc. So I feel very comfortable and confident in terms of making sure we retain the kind of the local knowledge, the local expertise, and importantly, people feel like they belong to a local area, okay? But I unapologetically want them to also feel like they belong to the faculty, okay? And then the faculty belongs to UNSW, okay? And so that's a big change, okay? And you can't force someone to belong, so it's about actually what's the way that we can run programs, share resources, work with each other to make sure people feel like they can part of a team, part of a school, part of a faculty, and ultimately part of a university. And I think that that's a bit of a change for the faculty, but one I think is really important for us. Other questions? No? Okay. Look, I might end it there. I should end by saying it's not lost on me that today is Are You OK Day? We're in the middle of a massive change, not only within the faculty but across the university. So I did just want to take a moment to make sure everyone is okay, and to kind of give everyone my best wishes, to thank them all for their support. I recognise that it's tough for many people throughout this process, whether they're directly impacted or not. We've got colleagues, we ourselves might be impacted, our colleagues might be impacted, etc. So it is important that we take the time to ask that people are okay and offer any support that we need to. Thanks very much for your time this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.